Hello, everyone. If I haven't met you before, I'm so pleased to have you here at the EdTech Strategy session. And my name is Rachel Riggs. I'm a technical advisor for the EdTech Center at World Education, and I do a lot of our work around the integration of AI and emerging technologies into educational settings, mostly focused on adult education and with a background in teaching English language learners. So I'm going to start with just asking you guys, when you think about the title of this lightning talk, which is Managing AI Waste, what is to you AI waste? And I wonder if you could tell me of a time in the chat that you were using AI for something and ended up with what you might consider to be waste. This is my example that you're seeing on the screen. I produced this image. And let me know in the chat, when have you encountered AI waste? So when have you been using AI tools and maybe gotten something that you just threw out? It wasn't helpful and it wasn't useful. This is my example from Canva. I was generating images. I wanted to see what it would do with the word facts. So that was all that I put in the prompt, was just that word facts, F-A-C-T-S. And this is what came out. Just, a diagram of all the facts in the world, obviously. Let me see what we have here. A background, and people were missing half their face, tried to create images of text, often when trying to adapt text. A lot of people struggling with getting the images that they want. Okay. Yes. And so I'm considering here, as we're talking about AI waste, I'm considering it to be a lot in the chat about images. The unnecessary, duplicative, or misaligned content that we can produce when using AI. So unnecessary in that it's not really, it doesn't produce what we really needed. Duplicative in that it might produce content that we actually already have in another place and in abundance. Or misaligned in that it might end up being content that is not useful for the context in which we are using it. So that is AI waste. And if you want to see more examples, there are some great examples coming in the chat. A lot is coming in about images and some about presentations. And yes, I also have yet to find really like a slide generator that I'm like, oh, wow, this is exactly what I was thinking. So I would agree with that one. So what we've been doing lately over the past few years is talking to a lot of adult educators about AI integration in a bigger picture kind of way. And we've been addressing these various dimensions of AI integration in resources and training and research that we've been doing at World Education. The AI integration framework has 6 different dimensions. So first is AI capabilities and learning goals. So matching up what AI can do with what we are trying to do. Mitigating biases, ethics and data use, ease of use, evidence of impact, and human oversight and over-reliance. So those are the 6 dimensions. And I'm not going to get into the full framework right now, but Justine is putting the link in the chat for you if you want to dive into it and see what these different dimensions mean and see some examples and questions that go along with them. But as I've been presenting on and talking to educators about this framework, this question kept emerging about what can we do to lessen the environmental impact of AI. So this is something that I think a lot of people see in the news and see mentioned in various media around the environmental impact of AI. And it kept surfacing from participants in presentations and trainings, and even just educators that I was talking to casually. And it really got me thinking, because what I know is that a lot of the environmental impact of generative AI, which is what we will be focusing on today, generative AI specifically, a lot of that environmental impact comes from the training of these large generative AI models, these large language models specifically. And so I was thinking, well, what can we do as educators? What are like the really practical things that we could do to manage AI waste and thus hopefully take up our own individual and collective responsibility to care for the environment. And so that's kind of what I'll be presenting to you today is my initial thinking and ideas on what we can do individually and collectively to try to manage AI waste. And I think this is important not just for the environmental impact, which is important, but is also heavily influenced by what large technology companies are doing. So we can take up our individual responsibility there for the environment, but we can also do it in terms of conserving other resources like teachers' time, which we know is a really precious resource, and even our own cognitive load and ability to manage all of the different digital tools that come across our screens and desks every day, as well as all of the different content that can now so easily be generated and we kind of bear the burden of having to choose from. So thinking about managing AI waste definitely for the environment, but also for these other reasons that are equally critical. So my best thinking was to start with waste management in the way that I know it in everyday life, and the way that it's been presented to us, just as citizens and community members. So this is the waste management hierarchy, and it might be familiar to all of you. If you saw the little triangle with the three arrows, then definitely I think that's one that we all know. The waste management hierarchy starts with prevention as the most critical and effective way to manage waste, and then reduce, and then reuse, and then recycle. So in that order of efficacy for managing waste. Prevention essentially means don't generate waste. It would be the prevention of waste generation. An example of this in everyday life is using reusable water bottles instead of purchasing more plastic water bottles. So there we're not generating the waste, or we can generate less, and that's the reduce. So with double-sided printing, you are generating some waste in the form of ink and paper, but you're reducing the amount of waste by printing on both sides of a piece of paper. Reusing, a good example of this is clothing swaps, and the idea behind reusing is just using something again. As a way of managing waste. If we can put it to use again, it doesn't go as quickly to the other levels of waste management. And repurposing. And so within recycling, we can think about upcycling, refurbishing, or breaking something down to its component parts and transforming it into something else. So in this example, I think of donating laptops, right? If we have an old laptop, we can donate it to an organization like PCs for People, and it will be refurbished. So I kind of have these examples from life. I'm sure you guys can think of many, 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 many more. And I wanted to think about, okay, so what would this look like if I'm talking about the ways that teachers and educators are using generative AI? So I started with prevent, knowing that that is the most effective way of managing waste is to prevent the generation of waste in the first place. And I thought, okay, well, how can we prevent waste generation in the use of generative AI? And I think the first starting point is to think of AI as a tool and not a solution. And so, like, if we think of a problem, right? The problem might be that I need a house and I need to build a house. So then I go and I gather many different tools to form the solution, which is the house that I'm going to live in. Similarly, we have problems in education. One of them that I hear about a lot when we talk about AI is teachers' time, right? That is a problem. Teachers do not have enough time to do the things that are demanded in their important roles. So when we think about AI as a tool and not a solution, we don't say, oh, well, AI is going to free up teachers' time. Rather, we look at the problem as a whole and think about what are the many different tools that can contribute toward a solution for this big problem. And I think that's a really important thing to think about when we want to manage AI waste, is to think about AI as it really is, which is an important tool that could be part of solutions in education to solve important problems. Another thing about preventing the generation of AI waste is thinking about what other tools we can combine with our use of AI, so that we aren't too heavily relying on AI for problems that it's not best suited to solve. When I think about this, I think about calculators, encyclopedias, experts, and curriculum. So knowing that calculators are better than large language models at solving math equations if someone knows how to use them. Thinking about the fact that if we can use trusted sources like Wikipedia or the Encyclopedia Britannica or all of those free resources that are online to search for information, we are getting better and cited information than what we get from a tool like ChatGPT. So when we are thinking about AI waste, going to ChatGPT to produce an article on a topic that already exists on Wikipedia, one way we can prevent that waste from happening is just by going to Wikipedia to extract the information on that topic that we need. So it's one great tool and resource that we already have that we can make use of. Experts, obviously, asking a human expert is one way to prevent AI waste. And finally, using trusted curriculum. So we know that curriculum is oftentimes evidence-based and really high quality. It's been heavily vetted. And so making good use of these tools that we have to prevent AI waste. In the example of my presentation, I also have run into this issue with AI generated images. And so my starting point for these slides was never to go to ChatGPT and try to generate images that would provide visual support for this presentation. Rather, I have many trusted resources that I've used for many years that I turned to give me that same added visual support on my slides. So the images that I've used so far, the photographs have come from a great site called Unsplash, where I can find free, high quality photographs. The icons came from the Noun Project, where I can find free, great icons. The illustrations I've used came from Canva, and the emojis I've used came just from pressing 2 keys on my keyboard. So if you're a Windows user, it's the Windows button and the period to call up any emojis. So that's how I got the emojis into my slide. I forget what the Apple keyboard shortcut is, but somebody put it in the chat. I'm sure somebody here knows. So the first step is prevention, right? So thinking about just don't use AI for problems that it's not best suited to solve, and combine the use of AI with other tools to solve problems. So that's prevention. But the truth of the matter is that AI is useful, and many educators are finding really great use of AI in their practice. And we know that it can really help in teaching and learning. So we know that AI is a useful tool for a couple of different reasons, or a couple of different purposes, really. The first is inspiration and creativity. Giving people new ideas, helping them branch out from the things that they do over and over again. And we know that a lot of teachers turn to AI as a starting point, a brainstorm, or a thought partner. We also know that AI is useful because it can help us fill resource gaps, especially in our field. There are curricular gaps. There are things that, for example, we might be able to find a lot of math content geared toward young learners, but maybe we need more that's in the context of an adult learner's life and interest. And so there's a resource gap that AI could help us fill. And then also media. We know that, for example, I have a colleague who later today, we're doing a presentation together, Jamie Adelson Goldstein, if you know her. And we needed an image of an adult learner in an ESL class, and we weren't really able to find anything online that we felt was well suited for the slides that we were putting together. And so in that case, it did help us to develop that image using AI. AI is used in a lot of different ways in adult education. I won't go through all of these, but we know that adult educators are using it across many different touch points or pieces of their program, all the way from recruiting learners, translating materials to help recruit learners, and then all the way to the evaluation and transitioning learners into their next steps by analyzing data and developing reports. So we know that AI is used a lot in adult education, and there are a lot of different tools. Anthony just talked about them. I won't go through this whole list, but you guys can look at the slide later. There are a lot of different tools that are helping adult educators do the tasks that they are trying to do, from using it as a thought partner, which is how we see a lot of chatbots used, to developing worksheets, which is how we see Diffit used a lot, to creating multimedia with Canva. We know that these tools are really helping adult educators. So we can't always, thank you, Justine. Justine dropped the list into the chat. We can't always, prevention is not always the way that we want to go about AI waste management, but we can start to think about what are the other pieces of that hierarchy in order to manage AI waste. So we know that it can help us fill these needs of ideas, learning resources, and media. And we can look first to the things that we have. And so we've kind of tried to map this out. If we're looking for ideas, what are the resources we have that we can look to? And here, colleagues, right? I think colleagues are where some of our best ideas come from, just talking with other educators. When we're thinking about learning resources, what do we have? And how can we use those in combination with AI to get what we want? So when we talk about learning resources, we have learning standards. We have curriculum, whether paid or free and open educational resources. And we have learner insights. And all of those in combination with AI are going to get us closer to what we need. In terms of media, we have free and open repositories like Unsplash, right, where we can look to get great media, or even YouTube. And then if needed, we can use AI to fill a gap where we don't or we can't find the right kind of media. And we've mapped these even to different approaches for prompting. So if we're looking for oh, good one. Okay, Jamie just, sorry, I easily get distracted by the chat, but Jamie shared a really great hack to manage AI waste in there. The AI waste that we never asked for, which is that Google search AI waste. So we've mapped these different prompt approaches. So if you're looking for ideas, a more conversational approach will work. If you're looking for resources, a structured approach, like Anthony just showed us with all of those components of a prompt framework, that can really help us get to the learning resources without having to do a lot of AI generation in the process. And if you're looking for media, being very descriptive in those prompts is really important. And all of that can help us to reduce AI waste, right? So we can prevent AI waste, which basically means just staying away from AI until we really need it and it really applies. And then we can reduce AI waste. And a key strategy for that is using strategic prompting to spur a quality output. Prompting really can help because it gets us closer to the output that we're looking for, and it requires less back and forth. And that back and forth is what puts demands on compute, which is then what generates a lot of waste of natural resources, but even our time, right? That back and forth can also have us wasting time. So prompting is a great strategy for thinking about how you're going to get that output, get closer to that output that you're looking for. And even within a prompt, controlling the length and the format of the output can be very useful. So within your prompt, you can tell a chatbot how long you want it to be. And of course, the shorter it is, the less calculations and recalling that large language model has to do. And the less reading and sifting you have to do in your evaluation. So a simple way to reduce AI waste is to think about writing a really good prompt for what you're looking for. And if it's text, thinking about how you're going to control the length and the format in that output. Another way to reduce is to think about the user settings that can optimize your use of chatbots in particular. So in ChatGPT and Claude and many of these tools, you can go into your settings and you can give what are called custom instructions. And custom instructions are basically telling the chatbot how you want it to behave. So one of my custom instructions in ChatGPT is be concise, because I find that, as many people have commented before, ChatGPT tends to be very long-winded, as is Gemini, as are many of these language models. So I put into my custom instructions, be concise. That way I don't have to repeat it in every conversation. And it's one way that I just can get it to trim down both for the compute power that it's using and the time and processing and cognitive power that I'm using to reduce that waste. Yes, good point. A great point by Rachel in the chat. Another way to reduce is to stop generating. All of these tools have a little stop button, and as they're spitting stuff out, you can be looking and you can interrupt and stop it when you either realize that it's off course and that the product is going to be irrelevant or misaligned, or when you get what you need and you realize, oh, okay, that's all I needed. So be quiet. So another great strategy for reducing AI waste is just stop generating. So we can not generate, we can generate less, which is the reduce, and we can reuse. So in reuse, I think the really key principle here is how are you going to find, yes, Jose, how are you going to find the content later and reuse it? And that, to me, comes down to organizing your content. So having a really good system for saving the things that you're generating with AI, and sharing your content. I love this example of an AI generated image library where people can go and retrieve images for free that have been generated by AI. I would love to see something like that in adult education or education in general, so that we could all share these images, tag them, and then more easily retrieve them, so that not all of us are generating the same image of an adult learner in an ESL classroom, for example. So in reuse, just use it again. And then in recycle, the idea here is to adapt and remix. And we are thinking about this in terms of open educational resources, because as you all may know, at World Education, we have an initiative called Crowded Learning, and we've really been leaning into how can we help expand and improve the system of open educational resources in adult education. And so I think this works into what we do with AI, and how can we take the AI produced content that we get, make it free and openly licensed so that others can adapt and remix it. So one example from our Gen AI Makerspace, we just saw this on Wednesday in our last session. But one of the participants, Matthew, developed this really great lesson plan using a chatbot and took some of the content from that lesson plan. It was all around skimming a website. So he took all of that, copied and pasted it into Canva to develop the website. So he had this great artifact of a website that learners could use to skim for key information, and then put a quiz into Google Forms. So what we see is that Matthew used AI to generate a lesson plan and then ended up with these great learning artifacts. So what we're doing with our platform Skillbox is trying to find ways that teachers can take various learning artifacts, remix them, share them with others, and kind of create this open content library and this system for sharing and reuse and remixing. So we took those little artifacts and we can put them into a skill box, and then those can be remixed and adapted by other teachers. So in AI waste management, if we get down to that recycle point where we have something that we really like, what are the ways that we can make that more readily adaptable and reusable and remixable for other educators? So that's that recycle level. So where we're headed in all of this is, we explored in Camp GPT prompting with educators. That's a training we did that was very exploratory. Now we're putting more structure to it in the generative AI makerspace to really see, okay, how can we use generative AI as a community and then take those things that are generated by AI and more effectively share and reuse and adapt them, so that we're not all reinventing the wheel and generating the same AI content.